This is Skip Hank, President and CEO of Explorer International. At Exploration 16, the Evolving Trends track was one of the best attended and most informative tracks of the event, as industry analysts and consultants focused on the trends and changing dynamics of the customer communications industry. So due to the popularity of the track, Explorer has asked our presenters to record their session from the event. Today we will present Outsourcing Print, Inevitable or Avoidable by Gina Ferrara. Gina joined Madison Advisors in January 2014 after spending more than 20 years in the banking and financial services industry, where she served in a variety of capacities. She has spent a combined total of 15 years working as project manager / business analyst in the e-commerce industry, focusing on the online banking and electronic bill payment space. Her experience in customer communications specifically relates to project management, consulting for print and mail operations, postal optimization and address quality, as well as multi-channel delivery. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over the podium to Gina. Gina?
Thank you, Skip. Thank you for that introduction. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the presentation today. I'm going to start by a quick review of the agenda. So some of the areas that I'm going to cover today. The perfect storm. What are the 6 factors that drive outsourcing decisions? Oftentimes, we work with enterprise clients that are thinking about outsourcing print. I'll discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly for outsourcing print and provide some helpful hints on items to take into consideration for this decision. For implants, I'll also talk about strategies for success if the decision is made to keep print in-house. In addition, I'll also touch upon 3 options for outsourcing, as sometimes it is not just about outsourcing the physical manufacturing of customer communications. And finally, I'll close with some helpful discussion points to prepare for that outsourcing conversation. So what are the 6 factors that drive the decision to outsource print and create that perfect storm? Well, number 1, a decline in transactional print volume. Transactional print volumes decline due to e-delivery adoption. I've worked with several clients that have had such great success with their e-delivery programs, and as a result have had a huge impact on their transactional print volume, some by as much as a 50% reduction. Number 2, end of life or end of lease for equipment. Technology is always improving and changing and becoming faster and more efficient. Implants that may need an equipment refresh may not be able to justify the capital expense. Sometimes it's hard to convince senior management to make the investment if there is a feeling that the organization will not realize a return and if print is viewed as something that just must be done. Why make a capital investment on print hardware when as an organization we really need to be focusing on our digital experience? Number 3, limited or no color capability. Are your internal lines of business looking to add color to their communications, and is your existing print shop ready and able to support that demand? As a result, some lines of business may go outside of the organization to a third party to fulfill this need. And marketing often requires color documents. Print service providers have this capability and have already made that capital investment. Since they are a for-profit business, service providers have the ability to spread the cost of that investment across multiple clients versus an implant. Number 4, document integrity. Regulatory pressures mandate full document integrity right down to the piece level. Privacy concerns with respect to double stuffs or accidental misprints where the first page of customer number 2 statement prints on the last page of customer number 1 statement, all cause for concern. Penalties for such errors can be significant. With respect to tracking at the piece level, are you able to guarantee that 100% of your documents were printed or that 100% received the privacy notice that was supposed to get mailed? Do you have the ability to track from the point of file receipt all the way through the manufacturing process through delivery, whether that delivery is through the Postal Service or electronic? And just a note here, electronically delivered documents are subject to the same regulations as printed documents. Number 5, disaster recovery and business continuity. If an in-plant has a single site or has consolidated sites due to decreased volume, then they must look to a third party for disaster recovery services and business continuity support. Sometimes, clients may gain an additional print facility through acquisition, but they lack the ability to seamlessly send print files from one site to the other in the event of a disaster. And oftentimes, what we see is that some equipment is maintained simply because of machine-specific jobs. Number 6, change in philosophy. So with or without the previous 5 factors, there is a change in senior management who may have a completely different philosophy when it comes to outsourcing. C-levels may feel that print and mail is not a core competency of the overall business and should be outsourced to a third party. Despite being extremely efficient and well-run, Madison Advisors has seen certain clients decide to outsource their print operation no matter what. Conversely, concerns with sending data outside the company firewall has also prevented some organizations from outsourcing print and mail. So what do we do? When do you consider outsourcing versus keeping it in-house? Let's talk about when an organization might want to consider. As transactional print volume declines, the unit cost is obviously going to go up. Economies of scale decreases. But what is the tipping point, and at what volume should an organization consider outsourcing their print? This is not an exact science or calculation, but in our experience and based on some of our clients, as volumes dip below the 125 million mail pieces per year mark, we've seen organizations seriously consider outsourcing as an option. However, this does not necessarily mean that if your organization has volumes below this point, that outsourcing is the right solution for you. There are other options when it comes to outsourcing, which I will talk about later on in the presentation. So let's dive a little further into outsourcing print, what I call the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll start with the good, the pros. Obviously, there's no capital investment required if equipment is at end of life or end of lease. And in addition to this, there is a reduction in expenses due to elimination of maintenance contracts associated with keeping that equipment. Faster time to market. This is particularly important to meet the requirement to convert monochrome documents to color. With respect to reducing expenses, outsourcing to a service provider will help to reduce unit costs since you can take advantage of the service provider's buying power for consumables such as ink, paper, envelopes, etc. Risk reduction. Service providers have the software tools and workflow processes to track every single mail piece that is produced on their shop floor, thus ensuring document integrity. They are also subject to strict data security standards, especially if they print for certain verticals such as healthcare, and they have to comply with regulatory requirements. From a disaster recovery business continuity perspective, service providers typically have multiple redundant sites. Disaster recovery testing is conducted, and they will also participate in any disaster recovery or business continuity test as required by their clients. By outsourcing print to a service provider, your organization can benefit with a reduction in postage as work can be commingled with other clients to increase postal densities to reach the 5-digit and 3-digit thresholds. Here are some additional benefits, most of which I've touched upon already, such as data security, economies of scale, and taking advantage of the buying power of the service provider. Most service providers offer production reporting capabilities with metrics and key performance indicators that are specific to their clients. Many providers will also customize reports on their behalf. Most service providers also have a dashboard that allows clients to log in, view the status of jobs, and even request document pulls, document redirects, and so forth. Enhanced quality controls from both an automated and manual perspective help to ensure document and package integrity. If a certain print job needs a quality control check before going to production, the dashboard allows a review and release to production capability. And many service providers also have 24/7 support in the event that issues arise. Let's move on to the bad, or the cons of outsourcing print. Although I mentioned that output is commingled with other client work to increase postal densities, this can also be a double-edged sword, as some organizations are too risk-averse and might not want this to happen. Typically, contract durations are 5 years. Contracts less than 5 years will cost more. Data security concerns. As was mentioned a few times now, sending data outside the company's firewall may not necessarily be desirable. There's been several highly public and extremely costly data breaches over the last few years, and no organization wants to be on the nightly news or the front page of the newspaper. With respect to SLAs, what I mean here is that in the event of a disaster, the shortest SLAs will be processed first. However, what is not listed here is price. Shorter SLAs may tend to cost more if you have high volume of quarterly statements and the service provider is operating at capacity at quarter end. In order to produce the additional volume that your organization adds to their existing capacity, the provider may have to purchase additional equipment, which translates to higher costs for you. And lastly, the loss of control, or what I refer to as the perceived loss of control. It's very easy to perform a quality check on a high-risk document or any changes to document that had been moved into production by just simply walking down to your internal print shop and doing a physical inspection on the spot. Oftentimes, some of our clients feel that there is a loss of control because they've outsourced their print and they no longer have the ability to do that. I'll talk about the last category here, the ugly. These are the things that I want you to watch out for as you start contract negotiations when outsourcing print. First, if you run an RFP and provide your volumes to the suppliers for them to quote, keep in mind that prices quoted in the response is dependent upon steady volumes. It's critical to understand any impact e-delivery will have on your annual volume. I have personally seen this happen with a client who ran an RFP for an annual volume of around 110 million, but because their e-delivery program had huge success, by the time the contract was being negotiated, the volume had actually reduced down to between 75 and 80 million documents. That has an impact on the price. So what I suggest is that tiered pricing be worked into your contract. You also want to keep in mind the costs for transition. Some service providers may include a certain number of free hours of development time in order to transition your work over to their shop. However, keep in mind that if your print output files require a lot of processing or post-composition work, these hours can be eaten up quite quickly. The prices quoted in your RFP responses may not necessarily reflect processing for non-optimized files. What I mean by that is, if your files require the manufacturer to do a lot of post-processing or post-composition work to get your files ready to run on their production floor, it may cost more. The bottom line is that clean files are less expensive. Other things to note are any incidental fees for warehousing pre-printed stock and pre-printed envelopes. And one last thing is in relation to SLAs. Is it possible that certain SLAs can be relaxed? Does a particular document need to go out the same day or the next day, or can that be changed to a 2-day SLA? Are you able to process off-cycle so as not to send in certain documents for processing when the service provider is operating at capacity? Again, this is something you may want to negotiate with the service provider, or more so your internal lines of business, but it may help you to get better pricing. The point of this slide is simply to show the progression of paper suppression, and that although print volumes are going down, it is not as fast as predicted. We've all heard that print is going away. Everything will be delivered electronically, but as we all know, there are certain regulations that require documents to be printed no matter what. So print will be around for a while. You'll also notice that as time goes on, the volume of color is increasing in comparison to monochrome. There are other impacts with respect to color that I'll talk about later on in the presentation. I'm going to move away from the outsourcing topic for a little bit and talk about strategies for success for implants. How can you maximize your value and increase your contribution to the organization as an implant? What are the steps to justify keeping print in-house? Well, first, start by taking an inventory of all of your printed communications. Sometimes this is a hard task to accomplish. I've worked with several organizations that have decided to outsource their print, and they do not have a complete inventory of all of the documents that are produced by their lines of business. Next, you want to identify the requirements from your lines of business, and in particular, marketing. Do they want color versus monochrome? Are they looking for a document redesign? And do you have the capability to do that? Conduct a cost evaluation. What does it truly cost to produce your documents? And again, this is another challenging task for many organizations that I've worked with. I've been told by several of our clients who say that they do not know their true production costs because they simply lack the data to do that calculation. Identify the gaps between what capabilities you have in-house as compared to the requirements of your lines of business that were previously identified. What do you need to take your shop to the next level to become more efficient, reduce your unit costs? What hardware and or software do you need to reduce the risks that I talked about earlier? And lastly, you want to create your business case to justify any capital investment to make those improvements to reach your success. I want to spend a little time here and discuss a few of the benefits of color inkjet technology. The price point for a color inkjet image has come way down since the introduction of this technology back in 2008. The benefits from color documents can be used as justification to build your business case and demonstrate the ROI and other potential customer impacts. So how does color inkjet technology deliver value? By adding color to your transactional print, you can deliver value by adding impact to documents and use color to grab the customer's attention. You can use color to improve calls to action. So for example, if you have a high volume of NIGOs, which is not in good order, and this is in reference to documents that are returned back to your company by customers, maybe there's a piece of critical data that's missing or a signature that's missing that requires follow-up with the customer. So by using color to highlight a call to action, you may be able to reduce the number of NIGOs. Color can enhance value with every communication by improving document clarity, using color for marketing messages to allow for cross-selling and upselling other products. And lastly, you can increase the synergy with the digital experience so that printed documents and electronically delivered documents look the same. Color also enhances customer relationships by boosting envelope open rates, and as I mentioned earlier, increasing the opportunity to cross-sell or upsell other products and personalize messaging within your documents. From a manufacturing perspective, print production can be streamlined by using color technology, and thus pre-printed forms can be eliminated. Operational efficiency can be improved by printing inserts in line. Jobs can be concatenated together so that monochrome and color jobs do not have to be separated and printed on different machinery. All of this has a financial impact. The reduction in pre-printed stock, if you think about the impact of this even from a disaster recovery perspective, now inventory for pre-printed stock no longer needs to be maintained at multiple locations. In addition, by concatenating jobs together, you have a better chance of increasing postal densities, which will result in postal saves. Madison Advisors back in February of 2015 had done some research called The Future of Color Inkjet Platforms for Transactional Print. This research was conducted with both implants as well as print service providers. For this research, we looked at trends in the transactional print market and the market demand for color. We asked what the drivers were for digital color adoption, as well as the demand for color by end users. With respect to selection for color inkjet platforms, we inquired about the business drivers and selection requirements for equipment. And lastly, we really wanted to understand what the barriers were for adopting color. One of the questions that we asked in our study was, what is the current mix of your transactional print output as a percentage of your total volume? What will it be in 3 years, and what do you expect it to be in 5 years? This graph depicts the responses of the implant facilities who participated in the study. The percentage of monochrome now, which is represented by the red line, the percentage of monochrome versus color is represented by the yellow line, and then the percentage expected in 5 years is represented by the green line. If you notice, the yellow line disappears, and that's because it tracks directly with the green line, which is an indication that no major changes were expected. So we wanted to dig a little deeper and ask why. What are the reasons for the use of monochrome? And at the top of the screen, you'll see the top 3 reasons: cost of capital investment, use of pre-printed stock, and business requirements from the line of business. None of these, which I imagine, come as a surprise. Other reasons that were provided during the study are listed on the bottom half of the slide, some of which may be specific to one particular participant but worth noting. So for example, the first item listed with respect to company direction. This particular respondent indicated that their direction was to standardize all output using pre-printed stock with a color logo. Other reasons include the lack of resources to convert monochrome applications to color. If you think about IT and what they're focused on, redesigning monochrome documents to color is not sexy or as exciting as making customer communications digital or creating mobile apps. What are the barriers to adoption of color? Well, the first one I call the wait and see factor, the perceived cost of color, the prioritization of the digital experience, and lastly, the cost and complexity of conversion. And I'm going to dive into each one of these items a little bit more. So the first one is the wait and see factor. What is preventing the transition of monochrome to color? Well, maybe there's no internal pressure. Other lines of business are not doing it, so why should I be the first? And oh, by the way, if I am the first one to convert, chances are I am going to need to fund that initiative. No external pressure. Maybe my competitors are not moving to color, so there's no demand for it. Other inhibitors include no unified strategy or ownership of CCM, and this is something that we see with a lot of our clients. With respect to the perceived cost of color, business lines might not necessarily see or understand the value of using color that I discussed earlier, or they may think that the cost of color outweighs the benefits of using color. Or they may also believe that the use of pre-printed stock is cheaper than actually using color inkjet technology. But the fact of the matter is that since the introduction of color inkjet technology in 2008, the price point of color has decreased significantly. Prioritization of the digital experience. I found this cartoon a couple years ago and I thought it was perfect for this presentation. Who remembers the predictions that print will go away and that everything will be electronically delivered? Has it really happened yet? E-delivery was a high priority for many organizations simply as a cost reduction strategy. However, the downside was that the lost opportunity to communicate with customers. In addition, back when there were many security concerns with banks or other financial institutions sending out emails to customers, if you remember, banks used to say that if you got an email from us that contained a link, it was spam and don't open it. The cost and complexity of conversion. This is the last barrier that I'm going to talk about. It is overwhelming for many organizations to make the transition from monochrome to color, as extensive document composition changes may be required. If your organization has old legacy applications or may use out-of-date document composition tools to generate documents, this only makes it more challenging. Some organizations just simply lack the IT resources or the skill sets in-house to do this work. Since most organizations operate on budget cycles, projects have to go through an approval process to get funding, but sometimes other higher priorities might bump down any initiative related to customer communications. And lastly, but still important, numerous technology-related challenges, which is going to bring me to my next topic of discussion. Why does it need to be so challenging? Is there something that your organization can do, and are there tools available to make this process easier? Post-composition tools. This is one option to consider. These tools provide the capability to re-engineer documents without having to completely recode them, and offer the ability to add highlight color, change documents from simplex to duplex, and offer postal saves such as pre-sort, householding, and address cleansing. By using these tools, you have the ability to streamline production and standardize your documents to work on the production floor. Some of the tools that are out there on the market include Solimar, Corford Technologies, Ricoh, and Cephas, just to name a few. But what if IT no longer wants to do this work anymore? And is there a way to outsource CCM? What solutions are out there? CCM Hosted Managed Services is another option, and it is defined as a set of integrated technology capabilities that enable the end-to-end management of the full customer communications lifecycle. This graphic is from a Madison Advisors research report. You'll see that there are 7 critical components of a CCM Hosted Managed Services platform, and they're all numbered in this diagram. If we start with number 1, data aggregation and normalization, you'll see all 7 components numbered here. Data is number 1 because this is a critical step for effective document composition. As data drives the business rules, it is important for personalization of communications, data analytics, and business intelligence. What are some of the benefits of using a CCM hosted managed services provider? Well, first of all, quicker time to market and enhanced digital capabilities. Lower upfront capital expenditures. Keep in mind that you are not purchasing software, you are actually purchasing a service. HMS providers have the tools to give business users control. It is no longer an IT function to make a simple change to a document, such as changing a logo, updating a customer service phone number, etc. Any type of variable content can now be controlled and managed by the business user. As a result, this eliminates long lead times and costs associated with having IT make those changes. HMS providers offer flexible and highly secure hosting models. They will either host it 100% for you within their private cloud or set up a separate instance within your firewall so that you can manage or create a hybrid solution where the instance is set up within your firewall, but they can manage it remotely as necessary. They will standardize all of your documents to streamline production to a white paper factory, reducing the number of envelopes and eliminating pre-printed stock. These companies do not own print assets. They are print agnostic and will direct your print wherever you want it to go, including back to your own internal print shop. So basically, print becomes a commodity. As I mentioned earlier, this is the research report that was published by Madison Advisors back in October 2015. In our report, we discussed 3 industry leaders in the hosted managed services market, NEPS DataOcean and Cedar Document Technologies. This research is available on our website, or if you're interested in learning more, please contact me directly. So whether your organization decides to keep print in-house or not, there are some options to consider. So what are they? Option number 1, outsource print but keep CCM in-house and maybe utilize some of the post-composition tools that I mentioned earlier to fix your output and get some of the best pricing. Option 2 would be to keep print in-house and then outsource CCM, possibly to a hosted managed services provider who can in turn direct your print output right back into your shop. And then option 3 would be to outsource both print and CCM. There is one thing I would like to note here that we are seeing in the industry, and that is print service providers are starting to get into the market of offering hosted CCM solutions. This obviously makes sense because they've become trusted partners of their clients that they are already doing work for, and they want to continue or expand those relationships. We look forward to seeing what this brings in the future. I'll finish with this for in-plants who desire to keep their operation in-house. What can you do to sell your story to keep print? If you have a plan to invest in color capabilities, or you already have color capabilities, do a roadshow and advertise these capabilities to all of your lines of business. And don't forget marketing. Help them to understand the capabilities that you have with respect to color. Establish customer communications governance. Set document standards with respect to look and feel, etc. Is there someone or a particular group in your organization that owns communications governance today? Oftentimes, Madison Advisors works with clients that lack any type of governance within their organization. And oftentimes we see that organizations have brand standards, but not necessarily document standards. And then create revenue opportunities. Is it possible to market your color capabilities to external organizations? Now, there may not necessarily be an appetite to do this at your organization, but the potential is there to generate revenue. So with respect to outsourcing print, is it inevitable? Yes. Is it avoidable? Yes. But the bottom line is that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. However, the final decision does not have to be a painful one. And if you would like to contact me, here is my contact information.
Okay, Gina, thank you so much for sharing your presentation. I certainly encourage anyone who has questions for Gina to give her a call, send her an email. She and all of the folks at Madison Advisors are just a wealth of information, supporters of the industry and certainly supporters of it. So Gina, thank you once again.